Beast came to the Genesis. You know, all these Psygnosis games came to the Genesis, and exposed people to European development in a way that they just hadn't necessarily seen in that kind of bulk before. And then you had the PC rise, you know, around that same time with Wolfenstein. I mean, if you really want to talk about the mainstream rise of the PC as like someone who was liking other video games on consoles and seeing something wrong, I need to have that. Like for me, it was Wolfenstein 3D, and then, you know, Doom, obviously, after that. But where suddenly it was like, okay, this is something I can't do anywhere else other than on this PC. Like, we need a 486. We need it right fucking now. And then that's what really, you know, in my mind, started kind of making European and American development like way more mainstream, or way more widespread, I guess. Mainstream maybe not the right term, but that's kind of how I always thought about it. And when you look at things today, that's why I say, like, oh, you know, the PC won, is because when you look at the games that people are buying today, the games that are doing well today, by and large, it's stuff by Western developers. And you see, you know, Japan is not the force that once was. Those games don't play as well worldwide as they used to. People want Elder Scrolls, you know, they want Call of Duty, they want, you know, like stuff that, like, you know, deep ass PC roots on the Titanfall team. Like, some of those guys go way fucking back. Medal of Honor and before and all that, you know, it's like the shooter scene and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it was an interesting path for all this stuff, I guess. But yeah, that's the thing, is people who like video games will find them, and people will always want to make video games because they can be made now on such a budget and scale that, you know, as long as there are people who love video games and will stick with them for the rest of their lives, there will be enough people like that for a small game to earn a profit and keep independent developers employed and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, even if, you know, EA were to somehow implode, video games would still be around. You know, they might not be as big, you know, and we might see that, you know, as time goes on. You know, a lot of people talk about consoles like they're going to go away because the mainstream audience is getting into this dangerous territory with phones and stuff like that, which, you know, phones could be a fad. I mean, phones are in a lot of ways a fad. You know, like, people aren't making money on the App Store the way they used to. I mean, or at least some people are, but, you know, there are plenty of people who are not. That gold rush is over. And so, you know, if the mainstream audience, if the kind of casual audience doesn't have to buy a console and is fucking around their phones, at some point, those stores, yeah, you're right, are clogged up with shit that are likely to turn those sorts of people off. You know, that could be harmful to that end of the industry and drive people away from video games. But, you know, that's not going to stop video games at this point. The video game industry is too large and has too many fans that will clearly never go away for it to get completely destroyed. Because even when we talk about the video game crash, that didn't completely destroy it either. And in a lot of ways, it was probably kind of a good thing. Because it was one of those things where every single major company had a video game arm producing shit. CBS was putting out. The games CBS put out, CBS Electronics, you know, Crazy Shootouts and Mountain King, and they put out some pretty fucking good games. But there were a lot of just bullshit fly-by-night companies that were, like, springing up, putting out garbage 2600 games and going away. And you know, that's just, maybe you see some of that on iOS right now, but they're already not making the money. Like, those companies are already going out of business, so that's kind of already happening. And whether it's self-regulating or it does lead to some kind of iOS crash, kind of doesn't matter. Dog Butter says, although it's way too early to call this generation one way or the other, it seems the PS4 is off to a good start. If it ends up becoming the lead platform this generation, it'll be the first time since the PS1 era that the most powerful console of the generation was the lead platform. I agree with you, but there would certainly be some people that would say that the N64 was somewhat more powerful than the PS1, but it was just limited by storage. You know, kind of a toss-up or something like that. But if you count the storage space that the CD allowed, certainly the PS1 was more powerful, I guess. That's kind of a weird toss-up. Do you think that this will change how games are developed and ported, i.e. ported down instead of ported up? Or do you think that system specs this time around are so similar that it wouldn't matter either way? Yeah, I mean, they're not really porting stuff one way or the other. They're just kind of doing the work in a way that it can be applied to multiple platforms, and, you know, they'll do their optimizations when they can for each specific platform, and focus on getting the Xbox One version to not run like crap or whatever they need to do. But yeah, I mean, you're right. The PS4 is out in front right now, but we're talking about 8 years, so you know, you don't necessarily want to call it just yet. But yeah, the PS4 is more powerful, and more people seem to want it. So I don't know if that changes development one way or the other. But in terms of like lead platform stuff, like, you already kind of hear developers leaning that way, that they are more interested in showing off the PlayStation 4 version than the Xbox One version, because that is closer to what they want to show faster, whereas they have to do more work right now to get the Xbox One versions running acceptably in some cases, not all. But yeah, we're already kind of starting to see, like, the PS4 kind of pull away from an industry mind share perspective, let's say. In terms of, like, hey, we're sending you a version of the game. Like, you know, that always meant the Xbox 360 version last time around, because that was the one that they cared about. They wanted you to be talking about that version because that was the version that was going to sell the most. It was the version that had the chance to sell the most because of, you know, how many consoles were out there compared to PS3. And so that was kind of how it worked. And it's this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of things there where it's like, well, we want to cover the Xbox 360 version because that's what most of our audience owns, and so this coverage will be useful to more of them. And then there, so everything kind of just conspires to have all that work naturally in its own weird way, and it kind of always has. It was like that with the PS2. It was like that with the I guess it was like that with PS1. Yeah, definitely PS1 over the Saturn, that's for sure. And then 64 was weird because they had to send out super expensive cartridges that then you were supposed to send back, but no one ever sent them back. That's a problem. So things were like $100 a pop. So yeah, PS1 was kind of a convenience thing, I guess, that everyone always had PS1. But yeah, PS2, because it was such a sales leader, that was the one they wanted to send, unless they had done so much specific work for the original Xbox version that that they wanted you to write about that one, hoping that people would read that and go buy the PS2 version anyway, even if it didn't look as good. And yeah, that's sort of how all that stuff always works. We're starting to see some of that for PS4. Discs show up and it's a PS4 disc. It's not an Xbox One disc. But we're getting codes for stuff, and we're getting both at the same time, and that sort of stuff too. So it's not a done deal by any means, but the early signs definitely point in the direction of PS4. And in terms of how that works in development, like development's changed with the platforms being so similar. It's not a port up, port down sort of thing, but it does become a okay, if we have limited resources, we want to make sure that the lead platform gets the most attention, and that is looking like it'll be PS4 in a lot of cases, and which is then troublesome because right now it seems like what we're hearing is that the Xbox One versions need more attention to run properly. So if at some point they're resource limited and they can't find the time to get that Xbox One version looking right, you might start to see even more of a disparity. But Microsoft will get its tools in place to make that easier to deal with, probably, and it probably won't be that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. The platforms are definitely noticeably different, but not that noticeably. For the game, especially for the games people are making. I mean, really, how many games out there are hitting that just don't even touch the upper limits of power on some of these platforms? It's like the independent development that's happening out there. Like those things don't use the full power of those consoles to run. They benefit from it certainly, but no one's going like, oh, look at all the polys that Super Time Force is pushing. Like, it's not that kind of game. That's been kind of cool to see us kind of get away from the dumb power struggle of like, how many shaders can you fucking throw on this thing, and all that sort of stuff. Having the smaller games kind of just sidestep that conversation has been really refreshing, because it's a boring conversation in a lot of cases. Benjo T says, it's easy to snort at Riot's proclamation that plots are overrated, but they are behind one of the current most popular games on the planet in one of the current most popular genres. They must be on something, right? Do games need to ease off on the highfalutin storytelling and get back to mechanics? I think it depends on the game. Of course Riot's going to say that, but at the same time, it's not like Riot has no lore for those characters in League of Legends, so surely they care about it to some extent. I think a lot of game stories are pretty bad, and mechanics can definitely push you past a bad story. But I wouldn't say that the story is useless or over, as they said, overrated. Like, I think it depends on the game. They're making a competitive game. Like, did Titanfall need as much lore as it had in it? No, not really. So, depending on what type of game you're making, that's absolutely true. But by and large, there are still plenty of games that absolutely require good plot and stuff. And the last question here, what do we got? Beyond the Grave says, I remember you guys talked a lot before the site redesign about having multiple reviews for one game. Did that feature ever get implemented? Yes. Yes, it did. We don't really use it, but we can run... It's basically the system we can use to review DLC. Could just as easily be used to post a review of a game that already has a review. It's kind of the same deal, just the headline changes from, hey, it's DLC, to, hey, it's another review of this game. We just don't use it because we're not even reviewing that many games to begin with. You talk about review bias in the podcast, and especially with Dark Souls 2, I think you're pretty spot on about assigning games to people who would obviously be interested in a game. Vinny is probably going to give Dark Souls 2 a good score, and you wouldn't unless you looked at it objectively, which isn't fun. While nobody wants to read you going, fuck this game over and over, a well-reasoned criticism of the game can still be interesting. I think this is what the future of reviews will eventually become, a personal evaluation of games pros and cons. Well, you're right and you're wrong. It's, yes, I think that's a more interesting approach, and I think something that we can do because, we focus a little differently than where, like, Giant Bomb's built around you kind of knowing us to some extent, or caring about that aspect of it. Whereas other sites are definitely not. Other sites are just like, you're not necessarily looking at the name on the byline. You're just like, what is this review? What does this site think of this game? So that I can start arguing. And in those cases, it's it's kind of a weirder thing. But yeah, I think reviews have gotten really weird. I think that the usefulness of reviews is lessened by the way that games change over time and the way the games launch in a messed up state. If we look at reviews in the classic sense as like purchasing advice that is available during the week of release, when a person's looking to make a decision, it's increasingly difficult to give an accurate review of a game. You can review your experience, certainly, and there are certain things that will never change, but definitely things that will. I mean, go look at, think about Mass Effect 3. They changed bits of the story. They patched the fucking story. Like, that used to be sacrosanct. It's like, oh, they might fix the frame rate, but this story's fucking terrible. Like, now it's like everything's on the fucking table. They can change anything at this point. They often won't. And the resources involved mean that most definitely won't, but, at any point a review can become totally null and void. So you have to kind of ask yourself, being in my position, like, what do you do? And everyone at different publications has slightly different answers to this question. Joystick has its state of service review where they kind of looked at Titanfall once a week, every week for a month to tell you if it was working or not, which is kind of funny because every single one was like, yeah, it's working. Yeah. The first one was like, it's a little iffy. I was like, yep, works. You have Polygon kind of occasionally re-reviewing games, but not looking at them with every patch and not changing, kind of changing scores here and there, and that being kind of crazy. And I think, what Kotaku has, like, I don't know if they even still, I haven't seen Kotaku review in a while. They did, like, the yes, no, not yet thing, right? That was based on, like, the game might change, so not yet. And with us, it's, I think our reviews are static, but we do a lot of additional coverage. We can do a lot of additional coverage around a game. And, we'll talk about stuff on the podcast as it changes, and we went into talking about Battlefield 4 kind of a lot. And checking in on Titanfall here and there. So, game online, that sort of stuff. And that's worked out pretty well for us. For Titanfall, I posted it without a score because it just, it was just such a weird review situation that I didn't feel comfortable kind of passing judgment on it until I saw it for real. And I might do more of that in the future. We might just get out of that type of review and kind of move into just kind of criticism or something different like that. I'm not really sure yet what the right answer is for that sort of stuff. But the message we hear time and time again from people is that they like quick looks for that sort of stuff. We tend to attract a savvy audience, people that already know games pretty well. So it's less about, like, what is this, and more about how is this. And people have played enough games that they can kind of look at footage and go, like, okay, I get an impression for how this is. There's a couple of things I want to know about how it controls. Okay, this quick look actually answers that stuff too. So now I know. And with that in mind, is it worth it to spend all the time on a review? Not that it's that much time. Because at some point it's like the time is spent finishing the game, really. I mean, the writing the review is the part at the end that just kind of, it just happens. It's all the time leading up to that is time consuming. And then if you were to, say, hey, we're going to revisit this game because it got patched, then that's even more time that you're spending and all that sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot of different ways to address the way games have changed. I'm just not sure what the right way is just yet. So we're going to keep reviewing games the way we've been doing it for now. It's definitely something that's been on my mind for some time. And it's one of those things that NYU talk, if you go back and dig that up, I talk about this some more there as well. So yeah, it's a weird situation, but games have changed, and I think it's everyone's trying to adapt or trying to look at it and go, like, do we need to adapt? What is the right way to adapt? And everyone's kind of starting to pick their path on that. But for my part, I think just overall the whole system's a little broken when it comes to reviews and scores and all that sort of stuff. Like, it just doesn't matter the way it used to, at least not in a purchasing recommendation sense to the people that are coming to our site. So I think we can do better. And it's just one of those things that I have to spend more time thinking about it before I kind of feel comfortable with a course of action, but it is something I'm thinking about. All right, well, that's it for your questions. Thanks for sending them in. Again, that goes to comicvine.com, and PM them to me, where my username is Jeff, just like it is. And I'll pull your questions and answer them when there's enough questions to be answered, right? Yeah, so we're starting to get ready for E3 and starting to figure out some logistics around that sort of stuff and kind of decide, okay, what do we want to do? What kind of guests do we want to get? What kind of location do we want to get? I think we have the location. That should be good. That aspect of this should be a lot easier to deal with this year. I hope. Like everything. That stuff can go so wrong, but that's part of the fun in its own weird way. Is like, okay, how's everything going to explode this year? And is this going to be the year that it breaks me? No, this will not be the year that it breaks me, but we're going to do this way, all this sort of stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to E3. Hopefully it'll be a big, interesting show. Or even if it isn't, that'll be exciting as well, because it's like the smaller games have started to matter more and more. Like, at what point do they just take over E3 because of their sheer numbers? There's so many more just kind of smaller team games coming out compared to just like the big disc stuff. Because running down a list of like, what would be the big E3 announcements that we would expect to see? It's like, well, they rumored Far Cry. I was like, I guess like Deus Ex will be there. I mean, Call of Duty will have to do something with that. Like the Star Wars Battlefront will probably be there, right? I started running down a list of like publishers that would have like that big disc-based huge monstrosity of a game to announce, and it just like the number of companies that are making those types of games with regularity these days, it's like a dwindling number. But I don't feel bad about that. I actually feel really good about that, because like it's creating more room for more games and more variety. And that's been my favorite thing that's happened over the last few years here, is just seeing that stuff come to fruition and seeing more and more people care about it, and seeing just like the console manufacturers start to care about these weird little games that would never even exist before. It's like turning on the PlayStation Store and just seeing Octodad big all over it. It's like, that's fucking crazy. That's fucking great that a game like that is getting that type of attention and stuff. And to me, that's exciting. Some people could look at that and go like, oh, games are doomed if that's the stuff we have to push because there aren't that many big games anymore. But no, it's fine that we don't have as many big games anymore. We don't fucking need them. in massive quantities. You know, I'm grateful that they exist, and a lot of them are really great experiences and stuff. But I just want more. You know, I want more variety. I want more little bite-sized stuff and just inventive, mechanic-based stuff that goes to extremes on that. But you know, has a quirky little art style that lets them keep the team size small and stuff like, you know, stuff like that is just great. It's getting back to, it feels like it's getting back to the roots of gaming in a weird way. And maybe that's just because the games, you know, in a lot of cases, especially the ones that are leaning on pixel art, resemble the games of my youth in a lot of ways. Like, it seems like that stuff has come back, and games are weird again. Strange, multi-genre, just weird things, and there's plenty of stuff to play. To the point where you can even close off a couple of genres and go, well, I know I don't want to play these types of games. And there's still a ton. You know, like, I don't have to go play turn-based strategy games. I don't have to dig into some of these genres that I've started to really kind of write off, because there's still just so much else out there, and that's just been awesome. So I feel really good about where video games are at, you know, and it's been fun to watch them get here recently too. You know, watching console manufacturers scrap and fight over these small weird things and trying to sign deals and stuff. It's just fun to watch. So hopefully you're having a good time with it too. You know, it's I don't know if dogs out there. Hopefully you're having a good time with it too. You know, it's easy to get hung up on a specific type of game and go, oh, they don't make these the way they used to. But, you know, just open up a little bit, you'll find something. And that's the most exciting part of all. Is that there's plenty of stuff to find. So, yeah. All right. I'm gonna get out of here. Like, literally, I'm gonna put clothes in a bag and go somewhere. It's really exciting. I'm really excited about it. So I'll see you guys soon, and take care.